What you see in front of you right now are two very exclusive watches. They're piece uniques. They are one of ones in their respective colorways. These are amongst my most expensive watches in my collection, and they're not very good. In fact, they're pretty rubbish. These right here are failed prototypes for my microbrand. Now in today's video, I will tell you the story of my failed attempt to launch the microbrand. I reckon that for every Zelos or Erebus, there's another 5 or 6 brands just like mine that never made it to market because they fell over at some point along the way before the watches went into full production and the brand was successfully launched. Now if you're new to this channel, please don't hesitate to like, to subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notified when I upload new videos. There's all kinds on here, but more often than not, it tends to be reviews. And I'll tell you why I think this experience today has helped me become a better reviewer. But first of all, let's get into the brand. So the brand name is Volatus, and that's actually Latin for flight. I thought it was quite a cool name. My background has been, for most of my work in life, in aerospace, although not currently, and I've always had a fascination with aerospace and particularly the jet age, the time when jet travel was first becoming the norm. It was sexy, it was luxurious, it was fun, and suddenly the world was getting smaller. So the aim of the brand that I had was to produce watches that embody and encompass that time in history, the elegance, but the adventure as well. So yes, it's aerospace themed, but Fliegers were not a part of the brand. I'm not much of an artist, but I did my best to sketch my ideas using just pencil and paper. And I'll show you now what was the final design drawing that I came up with before I wanted to move things into an electronic format. And you'll see the concept here for the transatlantic, which would be the first watch. So I knew that I wanted a world time bezel to sort of get across the whole jet age world travel kind of thing. I wanted delta wing markers at the 3 o'clock and the 9 o'clock, kind of similar to what you'd see on a Concorde. I wanted triangular hour and minute hands, and I wanted an aircraft outline on the tip of the seconds hand, not as a counterweight. The date window I wanted at 6 o'clock because I like symmetry, I prefer it to 3 o'clock dates. And the chapter ring needed to have a 24-hour scale in order to use the world time function. I wanted the 12 o'clock marker specifically to look like a top-down view of a commercial aircraft with the wings coming out the side and the fuselage center section. I wanted the watch to look vibrant on the wrist. The dial texture and the indices would hopefully have reviewers gushing out cliches like playing with the light. And of course, the technical background wouldn't be forgotten with the numeric scale on the chapter ring and of course the world time bezel, so it still had a little bit of technical clutter, so it wasn't overly dressy. Anyway, I had the concept pretty good in my head, but I needed electronic versions, engineering drawings and renders to be able to send to a factory to manufacture the watch. Now this is where my own deficiencies come in. I'm pretty good in Excel and I'm okay in PowerPoint and Word, but I don't have any graphic design experience and I don't have any drawing experience or any CAD experience. And so what I did is I went onto Fiverr.com and I found somebody who had worked with watch brands before and was comfortable creating design documents and also renders for new watches coming onto the market that could be used for manufacture. Yep, quite a niche, but I did find it. So what you can see now on the screen is a selection of these engineering drawings which would be used to manufacture the watches. Now when you pick up a watch, you've got to remember that every single element of that watch needs to be detailed. Every measurement, every size, every shape, every angle of every chamfer, exactly what the material is, exactly how that's going to be finished, what kind of brushing, what kind of polishing. There's a lot more that goes into the design of a watch than you'd probably imagine. Pretty much the entire watch was designed in full to be custom made. So equipped with everything that I needed for manufacture, I had a plan. I was going to fly out to Shenzhen, I was going to meet with manufacturers of watches, I was going to see what kind of thing they could produce for me, what kind of quality. I was going to discuss prices, get some quotes, shake someone's hand and do a deal, and it would have been an awesome trip. Something that I would have treasured probably for the rest of my life as an experience, and it would have got the brand off on the right footing. However, what actually happened at this point in the world is there was a small thing of a global pandemic, which I'm sure you're all sick of hearing about. But yeah, long and short, I could not fly. So what I decided in this moment was to continue working with the chap who had basically generated these design drawings and the 3D renders. He offered to liaise with a manufacturer and basically would be my point of contact back and forth to ensure that I got the prototypes that I wanted. And then, assuming that the prototypes I got would be reasonably good, I would be able to use these to at least launch a Kickstarter campaign. And then, of course, like with any prototypes, a couple of rough edges I would be able to iron out and have a good product when I came to actually ship them out to customers. That was the plan. Now the cost. I want to make this really clear. The costs are gigantic for prototypes. So the total cost for my business up to this point was around about $6,000. That was at the point of 2 completed prototypes shipped to my door, and of course the design work that had been done and the engineering drawings, that kind of thing. So it was a massive investment. They look pretty good actually through the camera lens, and I'll quickly give you some specs on this. So these are NH35 powered. Now the NH34 did not exist, or the Miyota 9075, when I designed and got these prototypes. That came a couple of years later. So obviously the obvious choice for a launch product in a travel themed watch would be a GMT movement now, but we didn't have budget GMT movements back then, only the Chinese calibers, and I didn't want to go down that route because you lose a lot of appeal to a lot of collectors. So anyway, NH35, 316L stainless steel, BGW9 loom, 40mm in diameter, 20mm lug width. This is a 48 click bi-directional ceramic bezel. It's got a screw down crown. There's a 3-link bracelet or a leather strap as well. The dial is stamped with the texture and the pattern which I described earlier. That's made out of brass, and you've got sapphire crystal with anti-reflective coating. So at this point, it might all seem pretty good, but these prototypes are bad. I was expecting to have a couple of issues, but the reality is these prototypes are miles off, and I cannot use these as a realistic representation of the final product. And I wouldn't feel comfortable taking anybody's money on Kickstarter knowing how bad these prototypes were. So the main issues with them, the bezel action is very poor. Let me show you why, starting with how it's supposed to work. Basically 2 spring-loaded pistons 180 degrees apart, and as you turn the bezel left and right, it's basically jumping between notches on the bezel, and there's a small chamfer that leads in to push the spring up and down. This method of actuating the bidirectional bezel might have worked if the factory producing the prototypes had at the very least drilled the holes straight where the spring-loaded pistons would sit. But on these prototypes, they're not even drilled straight. So what does it mean? It means your ratcheting action left to right has different resistance. One way it feels horrible and gritty, the other way it feels quite good. So, like I said, not representative of the final product, not something that I could give someone and say, oh, have a look at this, maybe make a review, make a video. It wouldn't work. The case back was uneven, the threading was offset at an angle in relation to the rest of the case, so it sits lower on one side than the other. This is just basic stuff. The 12 o'clock triangle on the bezel is sloppily glued on. The bracelet is low quality, it's jangly, it's rattly, and the polishing on it is very poor. The movement spacer in one of the watches is not fully secure. I actually think that the machining was oversized on the watch case, therefore when you operate the crown you get a little bit of movement on the dial. The crown finish is absolutely dismal. It looks shocking even from a reasonable distance. The stem is an incorrect length on one of the prototypes, and again that means you can't properly operate the NH35. And the leather strap was rubbish, like bottom of the barrel crap. So I sent a very strongly worded email expressing my frustration and disappointment with what I had been sent in the form of these prototypes. Now I accept prototypes are, in their very nature, going to have a few rough edges, but I've been hands-on with tooling, with engineering, for most of my working life now. And when it comes to simple things, like just drilling holes in metal in a straight line, and tapping a thread All you need to do is make sure that the workpiece is mounted securely and that you're operating the tool correctly. This is really simple stuff. It's the things like this that made me especially angry, because these are things that I can do myself first time. I don't need to do it 50 times to get it right. This is basic engineering in any workshop. Anyway, the factory did come back to me, but they changed their terms. They now said, yes, we're happy to make more prototypes. Basically, we understand your point, but we need a minimum order quantity now. And it was, I can't remember if it was 100 pieces of each or 300 pieces total. But they wanted me to commit to the minimum order quantity before they would provide additional prototypes, and I'd still have been paying for the prototypes anyway. Honestly, I thought this was ludicrous, because as a startup brand, I need a good prototype before I'm going to launch the brand and before I'm going to commit to any orders. I'm not going to commit in advance, and that wasn't the initial agreement. The initial agreement was that prototypes could be produced prior to making a minimum order quantity. So I thought it was crazy. Maybe my critique of the prototypes had really pissed them off. It certainly pissed me off when I unpackaged them. But I can tell you that for sure, I did not want to be doing business with this manufacturer moving forward, and I did not want to continue dealing with them. So at the time, of course, I was pretty angry and extremely disappointed and upset with how things had played out. And this is the point where the brand screeches to a halt, because I, perhaps naively, had not budgeted to change manufacturer. I had gone in too deep here, spent my money, and I was at a point where I didn't have a product I could bring to market. So that was that. Now, I couldn't have made this video at the time. I couldn't have even made it 12 months after, because it still hurt that much. But now here we are several years on, and I've made my peace with it. Actually, I'm grateful for the lessons that I learned. I think they will serve me well, and I hope later in life I'll get another crack at the whip with my watch micro brand. But the most important part of any failing is, what did you learn from it? And so let's get into that. The first thing is that you should absolutely budget to have multiple prototypes. I guess as many as you can. Just getting 2 different dial variants from one manufacturer was a big mistake. Even if I only had the budget for 2 prototypes, I could have doubled my chances of a successful launch by getting 1 prototype from one manufacturer and 1 prototype from another manufacturer. I think if I do it again though, I'd probably like to get at least 3 or 4 prototypes to really be sure, because it really is make or break for a brand how the watches are manufactured. To make things more affordable, the watch probably could have used more off-the-shelf parts. Perhaps I could have started with an existing case and then just gone ahead with my crown, dial and unique handset, just to start with, rather than trying to do everything fully custom machine, custom pressed, and the associated tooling costs that go with that are massive. So I think next time a little bit less ambition is probably not such a bad thing, unless I were to have a much bigger budget to work with. Another great thing would have been to make friends with other brand owners and get some information from them on maybe good manufacturers and good suppliers to use. Ideally not a brand that you'd be in direct competition with, but since this project sort of fell apart, I have become friends with a few brand owners, and I realise although you don't want to pick someone you're in direct competition with, like I said, people are willing to help, and they would be willing to share some information with you once you've got a friendship. Learn to use computer-aided design software. First of all, have total control of the design myself, and second of all, it means saving some cash, and it will mean more control of future watch designs as well. Visit the factories if you can. I was impatient because of COVID, and I shouldn't have been. The idea wasn't going anywhere, the watch wasn't going anywhere. I was in a rush, and I don't really know why. So that's my mistake, it's my impatience, and next time I will go and I will visit the factory or factories. The next point is to be really specific about everything in your design, rather than just specifying that the watch was going to be retailing around this price, these were the sort of competitors, and assuming that the manufacturer wasn't going to cut corners and would produce a good quality product. That's on me, and even down to details like, for example, the leather strap, which is extremely low quality and feels like something out of the bargain bin on AliExpress. I didn't specify what type of leather, I didn't specify how it would be constructed, I didn't make any demands on it. I just wanted a branded leather strap. and a branded buckle, and that's not enough detail. I find it frustrating when I see people in the comments who will criticize a micro brand who has really gone out of their way to make something custom, something bespoke and something original, but maybe it only has an NH35 inside of it. Well, you know what? The cost that they've put on the rest of that watch is the reason why it might be a lot more expensive than, for example, your AliExpress diving homage watch, and that might even have better specs. But do you know why that micro brand is more expensive? Have a look at their design, have a think about what they've done to get to that point. When you look at the pricing of watches, you can't just look at spec sheet A and spec sheet B. So it definitely made a difference for me, and it has changed the way that I review watches and the way that I consider especially micro brand watches when I know the tooling costs that go along with that kind of level of customization. So that's the story of my failed attempts to launch a watch micro brand. Like I said, it was very painful at the time, but I've made peace with the situation. I accept the mistakes that I made, but I can't really complain about how things have worked out. I've thoroughly enjoyed starting a YouTube channel, and I still really enjoy the creative process of making these videos, whether that's reviews or just conversation points. And more important than any of this is that watches are a great hobby and something that I am really passionate about and enjoy sharing with you, and vice versa. But there's far more important things in life. There's health, there's happiness, and there's so much going on in the world that really it's okay that my brand didn't succeed first time. And I really hope, like I said, that I will get a chance in the future to make good on the things that I've learned. Anyway, if you've put up with my dulcet tones for this long, thank you. I really appreciate it. Please let me know in the comments anything you feel about this. And if you've got any questions, there's probably quite a few things that I've forgotten to mention, primarily because I was trying to condense such a large amount of time into a reasonably short video. Anyway, thank you so much for watching again, and hopefully I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.